Friends, the excellent movie we are bringing to you today starts in the year 1890 in Denmark. This was the era when the invention of wind turbines, which generate electricity from strong winds, had already taken place. However, no one had yet thought about whether it could produce electricity on a large scale. Now, we see a boy named Peter from a small village in Denmark who is very intelligent in studies. Today, Peter receives a letter stating that his scholarship for engineering studies has been approved, and he can go to the capital city of Denmark, Copenhagen, to complete his education. Actually, Peter was the son of a poor priest who was very talented since childhood and had an idea for a big project. But to prepare its design, he needed to study advanced engineering because he couldn't start or present his project to the world with just basic knowledge. Seeing this letter, he becomes very happy, but his father was a very strict and religious person who wanted Peter to become a priest like him. Actually, he considered the greed for wealth as the root of all sins. Therefore, he tried to keep his family away from the city's glitter as much as possible. However, Peter had begun to hate his father's strictness since childhood. Now, they try to explain to Peter and stop him from going out to study. They say that the world is so greedy that you will also get caught in its trap and become greedy and corrupt. But even after explaining so much, when Peter does not change his mind about going to the city to study, they finally give him a watch and say that you keep it with you. This watch will remind you of my words and help you avoid greed. However, Peter was so angry with his father from the beginning that he does not take the watch from them, and in anger, they slap him. After this, Peter angrily leaves home and heads towards the city. After a long journey, he finally reaches Copenhagen. Then, we see that he takes a cheap room on rent and starts living there. Since Peter was intelligent in his studies, he starts working on his lifetime project along with his studies. Actually, this project was a very big power plant design that would generate electricity from sea waves and strong winds. But the college professors do not help him with this project. They tell Peter not to pay attention to such useless projects and focus on what is being taught. Soon, Peter starts facing financial problems. The little money his mother had given him while leaving home also runs out. Therefore, he starts looking for work to manage his food and rent. After wandering around for a long time, he gets a job washing dishes at a big restaurant at night. He starts his work, but at that moment, Peter was very hungry, so before washing the plates, he starts eating the leftover food on them. While doing this, a waitress named Liz sees him, and seeing Peter eating from the dirty plates, she feels sympathy for him. After finishing work, they talk and get to know each other on the way. Then, Liz takes him to her small apartment where she lives on rent. Now, they start meeting every day after work, and during this time, Liz considers him her boyfriend. Although Peter does not have any special feelings for her, he does not clear her misunderstanding and starts spending time with her like a boyfriend. This is because, due to her, Peter's food problems were solved. He worked with her as a waiter at night and paid his rent with the money he earned, while he went to Liz's place for food day and night. Then, Peter starts working hard and diligently on his project, and after a year, his design is almost complete. This project was very big and could supply electricity to the entire country of Denmark. But for this, a very big investment of money was needed, for which Peter needed an investor. Therefore, Peter decides to meet some rich people in the city and tell them about his design. First, he sells the Bible he brought from home at a junk shop and arranges some money. Then, he goes to a big restaurant for lunch because he could get a chance to meet rich people there. By luck, on the very first day, he sees a man from the city's richest family, named Solomon. Gathering courage, he goes to him and starts telling him about his design. Solomon listens to him carefully but says that he is currently going to an important meeting, so he asks Peter to meet him at the same restaurant some other day and leaves. In the evening, when Peter meets his girlfriend Liz, he reluctantly asks her for some money so that he can go back to the same restaurant and meet Solomon again to convince him to invest in his project. Liz agrees to give him the money because she trusts Peter and his hard work a lot. While giving the money, she tells him that if she were rich, she would invest all her wealth in his project. The next day, Peter goes to the same restaurant, but he does not find Solomon. Thus, gradually many days pass, and Peter also starts getting disappointed. But then, one day, suddenly Solomon himself comes to the restaurant looking for him and meets Peter very nicely, understanding the details of the project. Now, Solomon likes his idea a lot and invites him to his home so that he can also explain Peter's brilliant idea to his father, and then they can decide about investing in the project. Peter is very happy with this invitation, but he does not have good clothes to go as a guest to such a rich house. Therefore, he goes to a shopkeeper, takes out some good clothes, and pretends to be rich in front of him. After liking the clothes, he first engages the shopkeeper in conversation. Then, he pretends to have forgotten his wallet at home. His skill is so smooth that no one suspects him, and he takes advantage of this to take the clothes and says he will pay later. The next day, when he goes to Solomon's house, he first meets Solomon's uncle, who is the managing director of their company. After that, Solomon introduces Peter to his father, Mr. Phillips, and his sister, Yacovia. After this meeting, when he tells everyone about his project design at the dining table, all the people sitting there are impressed by his intelligence at such a young age. Meanwhile, Solomon's father, Mr. Phillips, agrees to invest in his project because he also sees that this project will be very profitable in the future. However, there is a problem. This project is a national-level project, and they will need the government's permission to start it. Therefore, Solomon's father sends Peter to the head professor of their engineering department, Professor Paragraph, whose approval is necessary to start the project. Now, Professor Paragraph is also surprised to see Peter's design because this design could meet about 40% of Denmark's electricity needs using only the energy of strong winds and sea waves and reduce the use of coal. Therefore, the professor likes the design very much but still asks Peter to come back in a week. After telling Solomon about this, Solomon considers it a half-success and takes Peter to a royal restaurant to celebrate. However, it is the same restaurant where Peter used to wash dishes. Now, Solomon introduces him to his elder sister, Yacovia, who was soon to be married to a big businessman named Albert. When Peter's girlfriend, Liz, comes to their table to take the order, Peter is scared to see her. He makes an excuse to go to the kitchen and tells her to behave as if she doesn't know him in front of everyone. Listening to this, Liz's heart breaks because she had already dreamt of spending her life with him. One day, Peter's elder brother comes to meet him in his room. He is a clerk in a church in Copenhagen. He tells Peter that their father's health is not well and that he always remembers him. But Peter does not care and refuses to go and see his sick father. His elder brother tries to explain that their father, though strict, only wanted to keep them away from greed and bad things. He insists that Peter should meet him at least once so that if their father feels guilty for being strict, it can be resolved. However, Peter, instead of understanding, accuses his brother of being jealous of his upcoming success and wanting to take him back. Hearing this, his brother leaves in anger. Meanwhile, a week passes, and Peter goes to Professor Paragraph for the approval of his project design. But he is shocked when the professor rejects his design, saying that Peter is too young to handle such a big project. Peter asks if there is any real reason or something else, if there is a mistake in his design or any doubt. Finally, the professor openly tells Peter that if he agrees to register his name as a co-inventor of the design, he will approve it. Peter, not expecting this from such a big professor, can't give the fruit of his years of hard work to the professor. So, he calls him many names and then leaves with his design. Peter immediately meets Solomon and tells him everything. Solomon is also shocked and can't believe it. He explains that maybe the professor rejected the design because Peter has no experience. He advises Peter, as a friend, to go abroad and gain some experience first. Solomon then takes Peter to his farmhouse, where his entire family is present. When Solomon's father and uncle learn about this, they decide to send Peter to their friend in Australia, who holds a senior engineer position in a large company that builds bridges and dams. However, Peter, after speaking harshly to the professor, does not believe he will ever get approval for his design. Now, greed to become rich awakens in him, and he makes a new plan. He tries to woo Solomon's elder sister, Yacovia, thinking that if he marries her, he will become rich anyway, and then people like the professor will salute him. So, he focuses on impressing Yacovia. She notices all this and, one day, tells him alone that she is already engaged to Albert and that he should stop all this because it is pointless to think or talk about it. But Peter does not give up. So, when they all start returning in a buggy, Peter, in the middle of a conversation, says that research has proven that humans can run faster than horses if they want to. Hearing this, everyone smiles, and Peter suddenly jumps out of the buggy and starts running fast. Seeing this, everyone is amazed and asks him to stop. Meanwhile, Yakovia understands that Peter is doing all this to impress her. She was right, as Peter holds her hand once they are inside and asks if she loves him or not. Finally, seeing Peter's madness, Yakovia agrees to the relationship. She confesses her love to him. And then, Peter starts working in Australia on the Solomon family's expenses. Here, he receives many love letters from Yakovia, from which he learns that Yakovia has broken off her engagement with Albert and has decided to marry Peter. Realizing his plan has succeeded, Peter feels very happy. During this time, he also receives the news of his father's death, but he doesn't attend the funeral. However, after some time, he seems a little disturbed by this. He wonders if he should have been there with his father, if he should have gone, if his father was really sick, or if they just wanted him to come. These questions start troubling him. After working for a few more months, he returns to Copenhagen and gets engaged to Yakovia. Here, his future father-in-law, Mr. Phillips, and Solomon tell Peter that some of their friends also want to invest in this project. So, they have arranged a small meeting to review Peter's design. Hearing this, Peter feels very happy because his name was soon going to be recorded in the pages of history. The next day, in the meeting with the investors, Peter starts explaining his design. The investors find Peter's project very beneficial from an investment perspective, so they agree to invest in it. But they present a condition to Peter that was crucial to starting the project. They tell him that he must first apologize unconditionally to Professor Paragraph, whom they somehow convinced to come there. If he doesn't approve, it would be impossible to get the government to work on this project. Hearing this, Peter looks at Solomon in surprise, who also signals him to do the same. But when the professor enters, Peter refuses to apologize and even speaks harshly to him again. After this, he quietly leaves the meeting with his drawings. Seeing this, Solomon and his father feel very embarrassed in front of the investors and get very angry because Peter had become so arrogant that he didn't apologize even after they asked him to. Later, Yakovia also tries to make him understand that a small apology wouldn't hurt, considering it was his dream project. Hearing this, Peter gets furious at her and says that if she wants to control him, this will be their last meeting. Hearing this, Yakovia is shocked and can't believe Peter said something so big. But despite this, she doesn't say anything and remains silent. After that, Solomon's father calls Peter and tells him how much embarrassment he caused them, something he can't even imagine. They sternly tell him that since he is now a member of their family, he needs to improve his attitude. They explain that he might have to do this many times for his work in front of others and that this is how one progresses. Arrogance never helps anyone progress. Hearing this, Peter's self-esteem is deeply hurt, and he decides to pay back every penny somehow. Now he neither meets Solomon nor Yakovia and spends 2 days sitting in his room. Meanwhile, the next day, Yakovia visits Peter's room and shows him an advertisement in the newspaper, informing him that his mother has passed away. For some time now, Peter had been staying in Copenhagen with his elder brother. Upon hearing the news, tears welled up in Peter's eyes because his mother was the only person he truly loved in his family. Now, Yakovia tells him that they must inform her father about everything, but Peter outright refuses to visit her house. He says he will repay every penny her father had spent on his trip to Australia. However, she explains that her father has never mentioned money and only wants to see him succeed. She adds that her father believes that being calm and composed is essential in business. Peter, however, insists that he doesn't want to owe anyone anything. Later, Peter visits his elder brother, who hands him a letter written by their mother. The brother also informs him that he has arranged to send their mother's body back to their village on a ship, but due to an urgent duty at the church, he won't be able to accompany the body. He asks Peter to go instead. Once again, Peter refuses and leaves. Back in his room, Peter reads the letter from his mother. In it, she tells him that he should fulfill his father's wishes. She writes that his father only wanted him to lead a simple life, away from the greed of the world. Reading the letter, Peter realizes that he has indeed become a selfish person who could exploit anyone for his benefit. That night, he is unable to sleep. Early the next morning, he goes near the ship but hides in a corner until his brother places their mother's body on board and leaves. After some reflection, Peter remembers his mother's words from the letter. He quickly boards a boat heading to his village and opens the parcel his brother had given him along with the letter. Inside, he finds the watch his father had wanted to give him before he left for Australia, a gift he had refused to accept. Seeing the watch, Peter remembers all the things his father had told him, which now seemed entirely true. Upon reaching the village, Peter attends his mother's funeral. His presence moves his siblings to tears. Being in the village brings Peter a sense of peace, as if he has escaped a prison and can finally breathe freely. He decides to spend some more time there and stays with the local pastor, who lives with his wife and daughter, Ingle. After spending some time with the family, Peter notices that Ingle seems to like him. However, at night, Peter is unable to sleep, torn by his indecision about what to do next. He spends the entire night staring at his mother's letter and his father's watch. The next morning, he visits the pastor and confesses that he has caused a lot of pain to his parents. He also admits that he has hurt Liz and Jacobia for his personal gain. Peter feels that he has betrayed the trust of everyone who believed in him. Racked with guilt, he decides to tell the truth to everyone he has wronged. Peter returns to Copenhagen and meets Jacobia, who starts talking about their wedding preparations. However, Peter courageously tells her the truth, saying that he doesn't know if he truly loves her. He confesses that he had lured her into a relationship for his own benefit. Jacobia is shocked and tries to reason with him, but Peter insists that they would not be happy if they got married. He tells her to break off the engagement and leaves. Determined to repay Jacobia's father for all the money spent on him, Peter approaches several investors to sell his design. Unfortunately, no one is willing to buy it, as the project had lost its value after being rejected by the professor. Desperate, Peter visits the professor to apologize, but the professor dismisses him, saying it's too late. Out of options and completely broke, Peter is forced to sell his coat at a pawn shop to survive. 10 years later Peter is now seen living in his village, married to Ingle, with whom he has 3 children. Despite everything, Peter doesn't appear happy. He spends all his time working on advanced designs that are too futuristic for the current era and thus remain unapproved. The family's expenses are entirely dependent on Ingle's father's salary. Eventually, her father tells Peter that he must find a way to earn money to support his family and cannot rely solely on his designs. He arranges for Peter to do some engineering work at the house of a childhood friend of Ingle's. Peter does the job efficiently but soon returns to working on his designs. Even while living with his family, Peter remains emotionally distant. One night, he confesses to Ingle that he feels like a burden to her and their children. He tells her that if he ever leaves them, she should not come looking for him and should start a new life with someone better. Ingle tries to console him by embracing him. On their eldest son's birthday, Ingle invites her wealthy childhood friend to the party. Peter notices that the friend seems to like Ingle. Observing this, Peter realizes that this man could provide the happiness and stability that Ingle and their children deserve. Because he has money in a big house, while Peter is an unemployed man. However, Peter's heart is deeply pained, but still, he gathers the strength to leave the party and go somewhere far away, away from everyone. After this, we see Jacobia in Copenhagen. One day, she meets Albert, the man she had broken up with for Peter's sake. Now Albert reaches out to her again, trying to rekindle their relationship, but she refuses. After being betrayed by Peter, she had decided that she would never marry again. She then takes her entire share of her father's wealth and starts a charity school for underprivileged children to provide them with good education. This news is published in several newspapers. Years pass, and one day, while teaching in class, Jacobia receives a letter from Peter, stating that he is very ill and wants to meet her one last time, if she has no objection. After receiving the address, Jacobia heads to meet Peter. She finds him living alone in a small hut in a peaceful place. Peter has grown a long beard and appears very weak. He tells her that he has little time left in life, which is why he called her there. He apologizes for using her for his benefit and then breaking her heart. Upon hearing this, Jacobia also becomes emotional and says that the happiness and pain he gave her made her understand the true meaning of life. That pain led her to start the charity school. She forgives him, saying that though it may not be today, in the future, the country will definitely need his designs. Peter responds, saying, "I know, that's why I called you here." He then shows her his will, in which he has donated all his designs to Jacobia charity school. Jacobia accepts the donation and leaves. After she leaves, Peter spends the last moments of his life in peace, and this is where the movie ends.